Your mission, should you choose to accept it. Check out the Real World's Mission Impossible podcast. Hello and welcome to the Real World. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us here on episode 55 of the Real World podcast. Make sure you like the video, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. If you're a movie fan, you're in the right place. Today's episode is all about Mission Impossible. So if you enjoy the Mission Impossible films, you are going to get a lot out of this episode. We're going to review and rank every Mission Impossible film. But first, let's start off as we usually do with some movie news. Superman Legacy has added 4 new cast members, including Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, Eli Gathegi as Mr. Terrific, and Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho. They have been added to the cast. It is a reboot of the DC cinematic universe. James Gunn is writing and directing the film, so I can't wait to see these characters that I'm such a big fan of. I've read these comics for so long. Seeing a lot of these characters on screen for the very first time should be really fun. Cameron Monaghan has joined the cast of Tron Ares. This is the next Tron movie following Tron from 1982 and Tron Legacy. This film will star Cameron Monaghan, who a lot of people know as Cal Kestis from the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games. The cast also includes Jodie Turner-Smith, Evan Peters, Greta Lee, Sarah Desjardins, and Jared Leto. In other news, the Screen Actors Guild is now on strike alongside the writers. All films have now shut down production, including Gladiator 2 and Deadpool 3, until they can come to an agreement. This could cause a lot of issues in the film industry. So we'll have to keep an eye on this story and see how it develops. There is a new trailer released for Blue Beetle. This looks like a funny, action-packed origin story from DC. Not sure if it's all going to work. Not sure if the comedy is going to work. Not sure if the action is going to work. So we'll have to see how it is. The first trailer for Wonka was released. This film stars Timothée Chalamet in the role of Willy Wonka. It looks like a whimsical, colorful origin story for the character, although I'm not sure about Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa. Sound of Freedom is dominating the box office. This film had a budget of $14.5 million, and it has already grossed $85.5 million just in 2 weeks. An absolutely incredible feat, considering this one had no mainstream marketing whatsoever. It is in a grassroots word-of-mouth marketing strategy that is really paying off for this film, and it deals with extremely important subject matter, so I highly recommend you go see it. The film celebrating its 20th anniversary this week, an underrated movie I enjoy called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This one stars Sean Connery as Alan Quatermain, features tons of literary characters coming together to form a team of heroes to defeat a dastardly villain. All right, well, that's it for movie news. So now we are ready to dive into today's main topic. That is Mission Impossible. The latest film, Dead Reckoning, Part 1, is now in theaters. So we're going to review every Mission Impossible movie, and then we're going to give you our ranking from worst to best of every Mission Impossible movie. This should be tons of fun. Joining me on the discussion, as usual, is Bert. Have you accepted this mission?
I have.
Awesome. Also joining us is Josh. Are you ready?
I will do what I must.
Excellent. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and start this discussion in regards to Mission Impossible. All right, so we're going to jump into this Mission Impossible discussion, talking a little bit about the history of the franchise. It's been around for a very long time. It actually started as a TV series back in 1966. That show ran from 66 to 73, and then a revival series came about in 1988, and that ran for 2 seasons all the way through 1990. The show was created by Bruce Geller, and it was a big hit. I mean, this was a really popular show for a long time. And had several guest stars, different cast members on it. And then, of course, it has one of the most iconic theme songs of all time, which they of course kept throughout the entire film series as well. Lalo Schifrin composed that theme, which is just iconic. So 2 TV series. They also have had over 5 video games now, 6 novels based on the series, and now 7 films with an 8th on the way, over 57 years. So this franchise is, again, a long-lasting franchise. They've, done so many different things. The films, just talking about the films, which is what our focus is on today, 7 of them over 27 years, 5 different directors, several broken bones, and I'm sure very many insurance agents had to work on these movies as well. So a lot involved in all of these productions. The total production budget of all the movies so far is $828 million, with a total box office gross of $3.57 billion worldwide. So a very successful film franchise. These are the first films Tom Cruise produced himself. This was the first Mission movie, was the first movie he joined as a producer. We'll talk a little bit about kind of our whole kind of experience with them. I actually came in Mission Impossible 2 when I was probably, 10, 11 years old, I think, right around the time that movie came out. Watched it on DVD for the first time, and just thought it was the coolest movie ever. So I was hooked from then on. So it's a franchise that, again, it's been around a while. There's 7 movies now, and Cruise is really, at the center of this whole thing. As producer, he has a lot of say in how these movies get made, who makes these movies with him, and he's a movie fanatic. I mean, if you've ever seen any interviews with him, he there's an interview he did with Jimmy Fallon where he claims to watches a movie every day. And so he's a big fan of movies and movie making. He was a fan of movies before he became an actor. That's why he wanted to be an actor. We have actually a Tom Cruise podcast you can check out on the channel right now, where we go through our favorite Tom Cruise movies. But now that he's a filmmaker, he's on the production side, behind the scenes, it is his mission to make every movie he produces the best it can possibly be. I mean, this is evident from these films specifically, but even other films he's worked on lately as he's become more involved in the entire process. He really cares about giving audiences the best possible experience in theaters. And he's a big, proponent of going to the theater to watch movies. And that's why I'm a fan of his. And specifically these Mission Impossible movies. He's really kind of like an old school filmmaker. He does a lot of practically, but he uses every technology at his disposal. But you can really tell from what's on screen that he cares. The quality of his movies, is very high, and he makes a lot of movies. But looking at the Mission Impossible movies, they don't try to churn out one every year, or like a lot of these big studios do, like 2 movies a year, 3 movies a year. He really takes his time in making these films and making sure that they're the best they can possibly be. So that's why, again, I think the quality is so high, because they're not so much worried about quantity. Because whenever you're worried about getting a lot of movies out as quickly as possible, the quality just naturally drops. And we've seen that with studios like Marvel and others that try to put out a lot of content. It just ends up going kind of downhill over time. So huge fan. I'm just glad that, there are guys out there that are committed to upholding cinema as the greatest storytelling medium we have. So that's kind of my experience, my general thoughts on Mission. Do you guys, Bert, you want to give us your thoughts on how you came into it and what your kind of overall thoughts are here?
Yeah, to sort of append what you're saying about Cruise. I mean, we said a lot of things in our podcast before about him, but you mentioned that he wants the highest possible quality. I would dare say probably everybody in the industry would say that about themselves. Somehow, Cruise is making movies that are consistently that good, and that almost never happens. Like if a big time actor's involved, just wait a few months and love great ones, but then just wait a few months and then there'll be a stinker in there, and that almost never happens. It has happened every once in a while with Cruise, but somehow, and I think he's a storyteller, and I think he injects that into the movie, and he won't settle for something that's subpar, and he'll probably fire someone before he'll let a movie go out that's not top notch. And so I think it's pretty credible, because it's not just his acting. He clearly sets a standard, and he will not accept anybody not rising up to that standard. So he's got enough pull to where he can do that. Most actors probably don't have that kind of pull, obviously.
Yeah, very true. It brought to mind the audio that was leaked of him on the set of, I think it was Dead Reckoning or Fallout, of him kind of going off on some guys because he's like, people are counting on us. Like, this is important.
Right.
Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he wasn't like that, it'd be surprising because
Yeah. Right.
that he's going to choose some people out to get this
Yeah.
kind of product, and
Sure.
so some people may not like that, but we don't have to see that normally, so that's
Right.
good. But I wanted to say too that I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, Tom Cruise, that is, but his little tagline under his name says running in movies since 1981. And so as I rewatched the series this time, I noticed that he does a lot of running, especially in Fallout. Like he runs for like a good 60 seconds straight. I mean, they cut it a little bit, but I think they do that on purpose because that's kind of his thing. I never really thought about that, but it's true. I saw the first Mission Impossible in the theater. Thought it was good. It was hyped a lot because a lot of older people knew of the TV show. I think I'd only ever seen one episode, maybe, and I enjoyed it. I got to tell you, full disclosure, I mean, this is bordering on my favorite series of all time. Maybe between this and Terminator and Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. I don't know. It's super high up there. So there's not gonna. I'm actually going to point out a few negative things just so that this isn't all flowers. You know what I mean? This whole time.
Excellent. Josh, you have any thoughts on Mission, your whole experience with it and what you think of it in general?
I think the first one I saw in theaters was actually the fourth one, Ghost Protocol. But my first introduction to the series of films was the third one. And I think it was just because like I know we have the DVDs of the first, my parents have the DVDs of the first and the third. And I think I just remember looking at both of them. And I don't know why. Usually I'm a stickler for starting at the beginning. But I think it was just because like, oh, this one's newer, and like, I think I maybe had seen a trailer or something. I was like, oh, this one's newer. This one, I don't know. So I just was like, hey, let's watch the third one, and not start at the beginning. So that was my introduction to it. And right from the beginning, you're just gripped with the intensity of it. And then I went back and saw the first one and then the second one. And then every subsequent one, I believe, was in theaters after that. So didn't watch the show at all. My dad, as you mentioned, Bert, people know about the show. My dad knew about the show. I think he may have watched it too. And he had some hype with the first Mission, like one of those movies you talk about, kind of like Gladiator, not in the same way necessarily, but where they have those big moments that stick with you, like when he's trying to get the tape out of that room. And so that was something he had shared with me about his enjoyment with it. And so, that's my experience with the films. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what kind of sets Mission apart. We've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but maybe we can get a little more specific about what makes a Mission movie different from, say, Jason Bourne or James Bond or John Wick, Die Hard, Rambo, all these big action films or spy movies. I think there's several things I'll mention here. First is the team dynamic. I feel like these movies, while it's Ethan Hunt's story, generally, it really does have more of a focus on the team that he works with of IMF agents, the Impossible Mission Force that he's a part of. So I think that's something that's unique. Of course, the cool gadgets, there's all kinds of cool gadgets that kind of set this one apart a little bit. Different villains, we're pretty much always getting a different villain every movie. We're also getting different directors throughout most of these films. So there's a change in style from film to film that's really unique, and we'll talk about that more. Of course, you have beautiful international locations. I think the tone is a good mix when it's at its best. It's a good mix of humor and drama. You kind of have both of those things in these movies a lot. There's usually some kind of MacGuffin they're going after, and I like how it's interesting. I started with the second one. Josh, you started with the third one, and what's cool is that I think you can kind of just come in at any point in the series, and it doesn't really matter because they're really standalone films. Later on, they get more connected, but I think you can still kind of just jump in wherever you want and enjoy a good movie, whichever one you watch. So that's something that I think helps, it stand apart. Of course, the practical stunt work is one of the main things that Cruise is known for and that the series is known for. So those are the few of my thoughts. Did you guys have any other thoughts, Bert or Josh, on what sets it apart?
I'll just say that unlike some series, I mean, this is a subjective thing, but I feel like it really levels up over time. And I can't say that about a lot of series. It just keeps getting better and better. Also, Cruise himself, I mean, there's few series that have a guy like him that, we talked about what already what he does behind the camera probably. And then his intensity, though, his athleticism. He does his own stunts. He looks cool doing them, probably as much as anybody. None of the other series have Cruise, so that's one of the reasons why, if nothing else. But I feel like, a lot of films like Bourne, and some of these have a lot to, because of Mission Impossible. I feel like Bourne was created and that kind of thing. But those are just a few ideas. Josh, you got anything?
I think to me, like one of the biggest things, or I guess the two biggest things, it's really all wrapped up in Cruise himself, would be Cruise and then like the stunts, because and just like that kind of like Mission Impossible vibe of like impossibility, and like everyone kind of knows that like this is like high stakes, because like a lot of the movies kind of gear up into it, but usually these like right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Especially with those intros. Not a lot of movies do intros before the title sequence or something like that, or a lot of movies don't even have a title sequence. That's something that sets it apart too, is that little snippet in the beginning, or long snippet with Fallout. And even too, once they start playing the title sequence, they show clips from the whole movie, which mean nothing in the moment, and you forget about afterwards after that moment passed. That's something that's unique as well. But I think the stunts, at least, like the tentpole stunts for each of the films that did it, like that's like something that like just a passerby would be like, oh yeah, the movies that, oh, he was on the Burj Khalifa, or something like that. And then like you said, with him actually doing the stunts, like it's real. And I think that's something like Bourne leaned into, like the realism and practical effects aspect. And I'm sure Matt Damon did all his own fight work, or most of it. But like it's almost like it's on another level, because the fact that he's doing it, plus this epic kind of stunt, it just makes it stand out.
Yeah. Josh, you mentioned over the credits they have little snippets from the movie. I don't really like that. That's about the only gripe I have with I can't remember how many of the movies they do that in, but I don't really understand why. Like the first time I watched Fallout, for instance, I'm like, wait, are they showing us what we're about to see in the movie? And then they even show some things from the conclusion of the movie. So I'm not really sure about that choice, but just a little side. I said I'm going to attack a little bit. So
was that maybe in the show that they did that, and they just keep the stylistic?
That's what I think it was. Is the show used to do that in the opening, and so it's like, stay tuned. Don't turn away during the commercial. Stay tuned, because you're gonna get to see this cool stuff.
Right.
But I think
and back then,
paying homage.
Yeah, and back then that was probably, I can see that being way more the style of like that, like a little over the top, like espionage, like kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Play into that. Obviously, they just kept the style without the cheese.
Right. I like opening titles. It makes it feel more like a classic film, because old movies used to always do that. Cruise, also another thing he's mentioned, and I've watched a lot of the bonus features on the Blu-ray set I have, which I've got a video out now on all my Blu-rays of every Mission Impossible movie. Check that out on the channel. But he talks about how he really wants these films to stand the test of time. He's really thinking ahead of like, what are audiences going to think of these in 50 years? What's going to keep people coming back to these films?
Yeah.
And that's why I think, again, they stand up to the best movies out there, is because there's so much dedication to it and thought that goes into it. So only two constants throughout the entire Mission Impossible film series. Do you guys know what they are? The two things, the two people.
Excluding Cruise?
No, there's Cruise, and then there's one other person who's been involved in every film.
His sidekick, what's his name?
Luther, played by
Luther,
Ving Rhames. Yep, he shows up in all of them.
Yeah,
yep, they're the only two. Okay, guys, let's get started with the very first film, Mission Impossible, released May 22nd, 1996. This one has a runtime of 1 hour and 50 minutes, budget of $80 million, grossed $457 million when it was released. So a huge hit for Paramount. Like I said, this is the first film Cruise produced. He wanted to work with Brian De Palma, who he was a big fan of. De Palma had done films like Blowout, Scarface, The Untouchables, some classic movies. And so Cruise got him on board. Of course, Cruise as a producer had a lot of say in what happened in the movie, and that caused a lot of conflict on set between him and De Palma. But through the crucible, as they say, greatness comes, because I think this is a fantastic spy film. I think it's really, really well shot. I really like the kind of throwback, old school, like noir lighting, a lot of shadows. It's got that kind of unnerving feeling. It was shot by Stephen Bruham, who had worked with De Palma on Untouchables and several other movies. He also shot a movie I like called The Outsiders, and he just did a great job with all the lighting. It just, again, it has that kind of Hitchcockian feel. It's very much a kind of like old school Alfred Hitchcock film. I'm reminded of Notorious. It's one of my favorite Hitchcock movies that it reminds me a lot of. North by Northwest. It kind of has that like, the wrong man story where they're going after the wrong guy and he's got to clear his name, that whole thing. That's kind of the story of Ethan Hunt in this movie, as he's a much younger, obviously IMF agent who gets caught in this kind of web of, intrigue and double agents and, double crosses and all this craziness. So I think it's really well written. It's just crazy because in the first 30 minutes, the whole team is dead. It's like, what is going on here? I mean, and they cast some, pretty well-known actors. Emilio Estevez is in there. And of course you have Jon Voight and the whole team, but his whole team is just decimated in that first opening sequence. The film actually started with that scene, with them already on the mission. George Lucas, who was a good friend of De Palma's, said, no, you have to have the planning scene where they plan the mission first. So you get to know the characters and you kind of like them and care about them, and then you can kill them off. And then we kind of feel something. So De Palma listened to that note from the wise Mr. Lucas and went ahead and shot all the early stuff, which is, great. The whole team kind of giving each other a hard time and they're kind of just having fun. They're showing you all the gadgets. One of my favorite lines in all the mission movies is "Hasta lasagna, don't get any on ya." That's a great one from Emilio Estevez. So everything there is great. The kind of craziness that Ethan Hunt finds himself in, and he comes in and he talks to Kittredge and Henry Czerny. I really like in that role as well. Jon Voight is excellent here. Cruise is very, he's a younger Ethan Hunt, so he's a lot more arrogant and he's kind of a little more selfish in this one. And he kind of learns a lesson throughout it. And, he's kind of reeling pretty much the whole movie. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And it's not until the end that he kind of gets ahead of the bad guy and kind of, tricks him. So I think all of it just works really well, very well edited, palpable tension, especially that Langley heist where he's coming in through the ceiling, that iconic moment that's been parodied to death at this point. But it's all just really effective. It's very well shot and edited. Again, the score is good. Danny Elfman came in and did the score, just a very kind of classic orchestral score that I think works really well. The ending, to me, it goes a little off the rails, no pun intended. They're on a bullet train and there's a little too much early day CGI there that's mixed in with it. And they did the best they could. And it still looks fine. I'm not bothered by it. But again, I'm trying to, like you, Bert, I'm trying to pick out little things that I can critique. So that's one thing that I might, critique about this one. But overall, I just find it very compelling, very well shot, really intelligently written. It's pretty complex. There's a lot of characters. The character of Max is introduced, played by Vanessa Redgrave, and how she plays into the story is interesting. But yeah, the entire cast is great. It really, really like Jon Voight. I've always liked him as an actor, and I think he delivers a unique performance here that I find very compelling. So yeah, big fan of the first Mission movie. Bert, do you want to give us your thoughts?
It's first of all, this is Emilio's film. He gets majorly shortchanged here. That was very surprising. But despite that, I really enjoy this film. I will say, whereas you indicated the train scene with that CGI, that is a little early CGI, that does kind of bother me. That's one of the biggest reasons why I wouldn't say I have problems with it, because this is still a movie I enjoy, but I think I liked that less than you did. I wanted to say something too about the director, Brian De Palma. He's probably an old school kind of guy, right? I remember when this came out, there was a trailer for a De Palma film. Actually came out before this. Was called Raising Cain. It had John Lithgow in it, and they were pushing De Palma as this. They actually centered the trailer around the director. So it said De Palma, it had big letters, De Palma, deranged. Like that. I don't know. You probably, I even looked it up on YouTube. I couldn't find the trailer anymore, but I never forgot that. So he's got apparently quite a reputation in the industry. But anyway, am I bitter about Emilio? Yes, but this is the kind of film that I like, and it's made very well.
Awesome. Josh, you want to give us your quick thoughts on Mission 1?
The first time I watched it, actually, I didn't care for it at all. It is coming off of the intensity level of the third one, which is a totally different time period, decade, everything
Yeah.
that it was made, and style of filming. So I do have to take that into account. But like you're going back to much slower paced of a movie or
Yeah.
toned of a movie. That combined with something about the beginning of the film I didn't understand. So like when I don't remember all the actors, but when the guy in the elevator, can I say gets shafted in the shaft of an elevator? When he dies, I was like, wait, what? And I was just thrown off like, how would that happen? And I don't know.
Right.
And that for some reason at that time in my life, it just left like a poor taste in my mouth. And I just carried that through the rest of the film and I didn't really care for it. After watching it again, going back to it, I appreciated it a lot more and really liked what they were going with. And even now, like some of the things you mentioned, Cam, are really cool. Like I didn't notice like the noir Hitchcockian aspects, which are pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, that brings us to Mission Impossible 2, released May 24th, 2000. Has a runtime of 2 hours and 4 minutes, a budget of $125 million, ended up grossing $546 million worldwide. This one, of course, changes the formula. So this was kind of Cruise's whole idea behind the Mission series, was, like we mentioned earlier, bring in different directors so that he can have kind of a different experience, different style for each movie. And they brought in John Woo. John Woo is a Hong Kong action director. He's known for movies like A Better Tomorrow, The Killer, Hard Boiled. Came over to America and made movies like Broken Arrow and Face Off. He was brought on board to direct the second installment in the series, which follows Ethan as he's on the hunt for a virus called Chimera. Chimera is a reference to a Greek mythological creature, which was a fire-breathing female creature with the head of a lion, body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent. I found out it also means something impossible to achieve. So very clever wording there that they used. This, like I said, this is the first Mission movie I ever watched. I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there when I watched it on DVD, and it was just the coolest movie I'd ever watched. I mean, this is like, you know, just crazy action, over the top, insane sequences here that Woo delivers. Cruise calls it the woo. You know, he's got to bring the woo. If you watch the behind the scenes videos, he calls it, yeah, he brought the woo, which means I'm guessing he's just referring to his kind of highly stylized sort of way he shoots action, right? It's a lot of slow-mo. It's a lot of sunglasses, leather, long hair, doves, you know, I mean, just all kinds. There's very specific things that Woo is known for and that he implemented here into the series. It almost seemed like, you know, he asked Tom Cruise to grow his hair out just to use it in the slow-mo, I think, what might have happened here. But I like that, you know, these especially these first 3 Mission movies we're going to talk about, is they're each very unique experiences. So this one kind of abandons the whole kind of espionage spy thriller that we got in the first one for a crazy, like I said, just a wild action film. So lots of gunplay. Woo is known for that in all of his films, you know, huge shootouts, car chases, you know, there's some great motorcycle stunts. There's even a little bit of martial arts fight choreography going on here as well. So all of that stuff, the stuff that Woo is known for, is just excellent in this movie. It really is fun to watch. It's visually very engaging and exciting and fun. I think where the movie fails is really more in the script. It's also the tone is just a little too self-serious. I feel like they could have added a little more humor into it and it would have worked a lot better. There's just kind of too much. It feels like melodrama going on. Just kind of like performances are a little too heightened. I never fully buy into the relationship with Naya, Thandie Newton's character. Even though I like her as an actress, I just felt like the chemistry wasn't quite there with her and Cruise. Doug Ray Scott is, you know, an interesting actor as the villain here. He's very, very easy to hate. You really dislike this guy, which I guess is a good thing. But ultimately, I never feel like his performance is fully where it needs to be to make the movie work. Funny, he was cast as Wolverine right before he got cast in this film, or during the production of this film, I think it was. And during the motorcycle sequence, he got injured and he could not join X-Men. And so this would have been a Wolverine had not he been in this film. They ended up having to cast Hugh Jackman, and he went on to of course, play that role in several films. So interesting. Yeah, and another bit of casting info I found out was the role that Anthony Hopkins plays, which is Swanbeck, the kind of IMF secretary, was originally offered to Ian McKellen, who turned it down to do X-Men and Lord of the Rings. So he would not have been Magneto or Gandalf if he had decided to make this movie. So
good choice.
Yeah, definitely. So look, again, Cruise, he's giving it his all here. You know, he's really, I mean, that incredible Grand Canyon sequence where he did the free climbing is just crazy, you know. The motorcycle stunts, you know, all of it is just really, really fun. But I just, again, I feel like the material is weak. The script, it just doesn't fully come together. The film originally was about 3.5 hours, John Woo's first cut. And he had to cut it all the way down to it's about just over 2-hour film. So I think we lost a lot in editing here. I think if it had been padded out a little bit better, I'm sure there was some deleted scenes that could have maybe made the movie work more. I did get to listen to the commentary, though, which is John Woo himself on the commentary on the Blu-ray I have. And he talks a lot about, his pacing, how he likes his pacing to be fast. And he kind of edits to music. He likes to have the score in before he edits, and he kind of edits to the music there. I guess we can talk about the music. Hans Zimmer. I've got, of course, the CD. I've been listening to it in the car all week. It's one of the best. It's just so cool. It's, the kind of like hard rock version of the MI theme. And he's working with, what's her name? Lisa Gerrard, I think is her name, from Gladiator that he worked on, the singer.
That's her name, yeah.
Yeah. She's incredible. And so just great music, to all the different locations they go to that kind of fit the music when they're in Spain. It's got that kind of Spanish guitar stuff going on. So just another stellar score. That honestly is probably the highlight of the film to me. It's a score that I don't mind listening to in the car. I literally have been listening to it all week. It's really fun. So all that stuff is good, but there's some bad mixed in. So like I said, the characters and the story doesn't really ever come together. Even the team dynamic, even though I like seeing Luther back, I like the new guy, Billy, the helicopter pilot. He's kind of funny, but they don't, there's not an emphasis on it. So I don't really get to know them or care about them as much as I do in later films. So overall, I enjoy it. I don't mind watching it. It's just not quite my favorite one. It's a movie that I feel like is trying to be cool and tries too hard. So those are kind of my thoughts on MI2. Josh, why don't you give us your thoughts on the second Mission Impossible?
So I would say this is probably a guilty pleasure for me. That's only recently. I didn't really care for it that much when I saw it. I knew someone warned me like, oh, it's the worst one. It's it's stylized over the top, all this stuff. So I did get forewarned. But I think now looking at it, I like you said, I like all the stuff works really well, like the stunts, and I don't mind the doves and the fire. It's like you kind of chuckle inside now, like watching it, but it's still enjoyable. I still enjoy that. Like I'm chuckling, so I'm enjoying it. Yeah, and all the stunt work as well. That motorcycle, the sequence at the end, the fight with the motorcycles and everything is really cool. And yeah, just him scaling the cliff, like you said in the beginning. The thing that for me doesn't work the most is I guess it's the story itself. I don't care for their relationship. I can't remember her name. Naya, you said?
Naya.
I don't care for their relationship, the way it comes about and like all that and whatever. It's like, no, what are you doing? And then that's what the entire story is based on. And I was like, So like every time they try and do like a moment referencing that, I'm like, it just doesn't work for me because I don't care for this relationship. But I like the Chimera and the scientist. I like all the intrigue that they have going on there with that, which is mostly relegated to the beginning before you start to figure out what kind of is going on. But even towards the end, once they're like in the lab or wherever where he's trying to retrieve it from, there's still some of that there. And like, how really bad is this? What really is it do? And of course, you got the masks, which they make probably some of the best use of out of all the missions, now that I'm thinking about it, because except for one other instance later, well, not really, but like you don't know that they're in masks, and the bad guy uses masks because he's an ex-agent, which is really cool. None of the bad guys, I take that back, I'm wrong. Almost none of the bad guys use masks in any of the other films. And sure, you don't know who's wearing a mask, but it's usually the good guys that wear the masks. So that's different here, especially right in the very beginning when you think it's Ethan, and then later with the double cross about like, oh, with the bad guy. I don't know. I really like those aspects, and I really like the villain. I like him as an actor. That's so cool that he could have been Wolverine. That'd be like one of those like, oh, look, the paths of the multiverse are splitting. It'd be so different. I really like him as a villain. I think that's why that and all the action stuff is kind of why it's a guilty pleasure for me.
Gotcha. All right, Bert, give us your thoughts on MI2.
Well, I get all the criticisms. I've heard quite a few of them. So I want to start, although the opening rock climbing sequence, it is a bit pretentious. And in fact, that Ben Stiller video he does where he lampoons the film. I mean, it's so funny. And maybe it's because the film, like you said, Cam, it doesn't have a lot of humor. You're right. So it's a perfect one to pick. And so that scene maybe to me is the one that doesn't work the best. I mean, the whole film is the odd one out in this series, the entire series. It's nothing like any of the other ones. It just happens to be, though, you mentioned the style. It's a style that I really like. I really like the look of it. The stunts here, I don't know of a movie that has better stunts than this film. Maybe ever made, because it's all practical, right? And Cruise, he's probably at his most athletic that we've ever seen him. Some of the moves like karate or, martial arts moves he does are just pretty insane and couldn't have felt good. I mean, he went through some pain to deliver some of these blows, right? Which is pretty outrageous. I like Dougray Scott, or however you say his name. He was in Ever After too. That was a good one. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that he probably could have had a few more scenes. And so when you said there was a longer cut, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what it is. Because that probably would have helped some people that are like, I mean, he's only got a few moments where he's even on screen. And so I wish we could have gotten more. Maybe there's a Wu cut at some point. But and he's also he's pretty menacing in the scenes that he's in. And he's a good physical match for Ethan. And I think that's important. That soundtrack, Cam, you and I are right on. And I'm sure, Josh, you probably like it too. But that soundtrack, especially I like the flamenco bits, it's just so melodic. It's just wonderful listening away from the movie. And again, like nothing else in the series too. I like that Wu let Hans do what he wanted, and the music, rises up to the top. It's not just background music, which is what you got to do when you hire Mr. Zimmer. In any case, so yeah, to me, like all the slow-mo, all the stylistic stuff is huge in my book. And so the downfall, I can see it, but I just get so much enjoyment from the rest. So that's where I'm at.
Excellent. All right, let's move right along to Mission Impossible 3, released May 5th, 2006. This one has a runtime of 2 hours and 6 minutes, a budget of $185 million, grossed $398 million. So this is 6 years after the second Mission Impossible film. Cruise was doing other things, but always wanted to come back and again try a different style. So he happened to be watching the show Alias one night, and he saw directed by J.J. Abrams come up on screen, and he called him up and said, "You're making the next mission movie. Do you choose to accept?" So cool. And Abrams accepted the mission. And so this is JJ's first movie, as we mentioned on last week's podcast, directorial debuts, one of Josh's favorites. So JJ, of course, has gone on to do, Star Trek and Star Wars and Super 8 and all kinds of great films. So really talented guy. This one, it mixes in, I think, the spy elements, kind of brings the spy elements more to the forefront, while still delivering really exciting action. JJ's movies, they've got a pace to them that is just really, really quick. The thing that's great about him, though, is that he really cares about character. And that's what Cruise wanted to do with this one. He wanted to get more into who is Ethan Hunt, outside of the spy game, and so we kind of start this movie where he's retired. He's ready to settle down, and he gets pulled back in, of course, to the IMF. And the story is one of, it's a very personal one, because not only is he, getting married and all this stuff in his personal life, but he's going to rescue his trainee, this woman that he trained and he, certified for active field duty, the first one. And so that whole storyline is just really well done. This one, to me, it sets the franchise on course, right? Like for the movies moving forward, this is kind of like, here's our formula. Because this one is where we start to get more focused on the team. I really like the team in this movie and their dynamic and how they work together. And I like the villain. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman here is just incredible. His performance is really good. He's ruthless, very, very scary and cunning villain. So he does a great job in the role. Of course, this one introduces Simon Pegg as Benji Dunn in a small role. He's not really part of the team yet. He's just kind of the guy in the chair over at IMF headquarters, helping him out a couple times. But great addition to the cast there. Of course, Ving Rhames is back again as Luther, and he and Ethan get a few more really good kind of personal moments that I think help establish the relationship more. So yeah, it's the most personal one yet. and it really delivers on the action. It doesn't have really a big stunt. I mean, it has a couple like really cool stunts in it. They haven't really figured out like what's our big stunt thing, and that's kind of what they started to do moving forward. But there are still some really well done, well executed stunts in the film, and so he just does a great job as a first time director. He's again coming from television, so it kind of has a smaller feel to me. It doesn't have the big grand scope that some of the later films do, but it has kind of more of an intimacy, a lot of handheld camera work and stuff like that again just sets it apart, makes it feel different. So it has some weaknesses, but it has a lot of strengths. And I think this is a really, really solid first film from a director and a really solid mission movie. A great score too by Michael Giacchino, who came on board for this one, who's collaborated with Abrams on several movies. But yeah, this one, I think what it does really well is the villain and kind of starting to establish the franchise formula of like, go get the thing, work with the team, beat the villain, and that kind of thing. So big fan of MI3. Bert, why don't you give us your thoughts on this one?
I really like this one too. So I wanted to throw out a few criticisms that I see that keep it from being a 5-star film, because I really like this film, but I find these things kind of like they could have just made it a little bit different. For starters, the opening scene, Philip Seymour Hoffman is great. Tom Cruise is incredible with his acting here. Michelle Monaghan doesn't talk, but is great. And yet I'm confounded why you've got this super, and maybe the most intense scene we get in the entire series, and then it cuts to the theme, and it's like a completely pulls the rug out from under you completely. And now I get it, it's the theme, but this is where I think something like Bond excels at, is because you can, they pick a song maybe that is going to set that mood, and it's just such a juxtaposition that it's too jarring. And I think that hurts the film a little bit because, and it's an editing choice, right? They JJ wanted that scene at the beginning, probably because Philip Seymour Hoffman, as good as he is, he also doesn't get a lot of scenes. And I think they wanted to establish right off the bat, this is a real villain, and it got some good stuff for him here. So they wanted to give you a little sneak peek of that. But thoughts on that, guys?
For me, I think it mirrors kind of like what he did later with Star Trek. Where you have this intense opening scene, they're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And you're just like right in it and right thrown into the middle of it as that scene ends. Then you have the crescendo of the music and the title come across the screen. And I think it resulted in the same thing for me on both times, where it was like, man, okay, we're in for a ride here. Maybe that's what he was going for with both of them, with these highly intense intro scenes. And then we cut to the score, or the theme and the title sequence. I think it kind of gives it like a, here you go, let's go.
It's like a way to juxtapose like a super intense moment, and then we get that theme with the opening titles, and then we go into the party, right? Isn't that the next moment? Yeah. So I think he wants to kind of juxtapose like this crazy thing with like a super normal kind of thing. So I think that's what he was going for. I get if it doesn't work for you though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just jarring, but the movie, like you said, it doesn't have like these major like action pieces necessarily. I think that's something that's missing compared to some of the others that I'll mention as we go on. There's not that thing that sort of like your jaws dropped or that kind of thing. The bridge scene is another one that I like the scene, except that and this moment was in the trailer where the rocket lands or whatever near Hunt, and there's an explosion and he's sent flying. It's like he's sent in the wrong direction. Does anybody else get that feeling? It's like the blast should come this way and he moves that way. You know what I mean? And I remember the first time I saw the trailer, I'm like, whoa, what's going on with that special effect shot? So every time I see it, I'm waiting for this thing that I don't really buy. Maybe it's just I'm not getting the angle. Maybe I'm the problem. I don't know. That's another little pick. Again, I really enjoy this movie though. The last thing that I'll pick on is the ending is the callback to the opening scene. And I don't know that as the conclusion of your movie in this really, really intense moment that you use a mask there. I didn't love that. I felt it was too much of a bailout. They wanted to push it so far to bring that out of Cruise, that emotion and all that. So I didn't really love that. And then the resuscitation scene too, it's kind of rushed. It's not that believable. But and for goodness sake, they should always tell you what the MacGuffin is. Like, what is the rabbit's foot? At least tell us. Say anything, make it up. I don't know. I mean, obviously everything's made up here, but but there's enough fun spy stuff in this thing to make it an extremely good movie. So I just had to pick on it a little bit. One more thing too. At one point in the movie, they're like 3D printing a mask, which is kind of cool because 3D printing, I mean, maybe it just started, but I don't know if that's what they modeled it after. But it kind of reminded me of Darkman, with that kind of stuff that he's doing. I don't know if anybody else thinks of that when they see that, but anyway.
Great thoughts. All right, Josh, give us your thoughts on MI3.
Yeah, I too noticed not at first, but I have since noticed the missile thing and him going in, like, shouldn't he be going forward, flying at the camera, not?
Yeah.
But I think maybe he just wanted to do, because I think that was really him doing.
Yeah.
There's a shot with him on the tie it up and where he gets flung. So I think maybe it was just like an excuse to get a stunt out there because it looks really cool. So I don't mind it that much because I know it was really him doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Cameron, you hit it on the nail when you said it's about characters. Because like the entire cast is just amazing and everyone does an incredible job at being a really good character with multifaceted. Pretty much everyone we see is a round character. No one's flat. They all have something to contribute. Even like Kerry Russell as Lindsay Ferris in the very beginning, like just because they established that he trained her and they have those like flashback shots or whatever. Well, I guess the flashback shots I think take place after, but like even then I love it when there's a character that's like a total boss, and then even if they don't make it or they're not in it that long, this still sticks with you. Kind of like Ana de Armas in No Time to Die. She's only in it for that little bit, but she's like super cool. So kind of like that. I think that kind of is kind of like a similar thing here. And then like you gotta love that moment where he's like, he checks his gun and you're like, how many bullets do you have? And he says enough, and then he just shoots the guy the once, and then he's like out, and it's just like you blink and you miss it, but it's just there, and it's like so cool. But yeah, I love Benji's introduction here, and then he said later becomes part of the team. I like that. That's not like a lot of the movies, and I don't know whose idea it was to do it, but I like a lot of the movies. There's just kind of like, this is the team, and it always starts at a certain level, where everyone starts at a certain level, but he's starting like at the bottom, not a part of the team, and then slowly grows into it, which I thought I like that aspect. Yes, Philip Seymour Hoffman is probably the greatest villain in this series. At least for me, he's probably my favorite. But yeah, just like, even though he's not like, he's very like, I don't know if stoic is the right word, but he's not like an overly gesturing or moving kind of character. But he's very imposing, and maybe it's just from the setup, from the beginning, the way they showed the beginning scene there. But you don't mess with him. And when he says, "I will," when he threatens him in the plane, you're like, I don't know how he's going to do it, but I believe him. And so very, very well done there. And just the dynamic of all the characters interacting and how, and like what they mean to Ethan, especially with his wife. I thought that was really good. And I think maybe to speak to the mask thing at the end, I think maybe that's just part of the villain, because that his whole thing was he did what he said he would do. Technically he didn't because it was a mask. But I think it was just kind of like that villainy of toying with Ethan and showing that. Yeah, I kind of like that they don't say what the rabbit's foot is. I kind of like that they leave that, like that Lawrence Fishburne has that, which he's a great character in this too, with that line like, if you stay, I'll tell you what it is. And he's like, no, never mind. He's like, okay. I like that they don't do that, because I don't know, sometimes you usually don't get it with these kind of movies, with action flicks like this, but sometimes with movies like Transformers or things like that, when they go too far and they like level a city and you're like, okay, well, now you just burst the bubble of believability, or I know it's not called that, Uncanny Valley. Now we're in Uncanny Valley because obviously New York isn't destroyed. Like, you can only do so much before it just kind of breaks that. And I think sometimes movies will be like, oh, it's a nuke, or they'll go like super drastic, and then everyone kind of rolls their eyes like, oh, it's another world-ending movie. So I kind of like that they didn't tell you what it is, at least for me. But yeah, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love the twists that they give. Yeah, I really like Billy Cudrup does a really good job as Musgrave, and just like the interactions between him and Ethan are really cool, especially later in the movie as well. All around stellar film.
Excellent. Great stuff. I got to mention Hoffman playing Ethan Hunt as
oh my gosh.
I mean, that's just, that whole sequence is so good.
I do love
all
that
stuff is,
yeah.
The stuff at the Vatican is probably my highlight for that movie. It's a really good scene.
I was thinking about it earlier today. I think the musical themes that each composer did really reflects, and I don't know the order of when they composed things versus how much the movie was done, but I feel like they all pretty well encapsulate the general tone of the film. And maybe Playful with this one doesn't capture it so much. I don't know. It just kind of works for the tone of the film. And comparing each of the themes, it's interesting. Like this one doesn't have very much bass to it. It's very high up there. So maybe that speaks to like the height of the tension. I don't know, just an observation. But each of these, like obviously the Hans Zimmer's like rock anthem goes right along with the tone of that one. And then the next one is, I think, my favorite mission theme. But yeah, we'll leave it off that. I'll revisit it with each.
Excellent. Let's move right along to Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, released December 16th, 2011, runtime of 2 hours, 13 minutes, budget of 145 million, grossed 694 million. So again, we're bringing on a new director here, although JJ did come back to produce, so he's producing alongside Tom Cruise. Brad Bird they brought in, which was Tom Cruise's idea. He is a big fan of movies that we talked about recently, The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, Ratatouille. He was a big fan of all those films, and he said, I want this guy to direct the next one. Called him up. I'm giving you your first live action film, and Brad Bird signed on. So he again brings a different kind of feel to the film. Opens up with a great rooftop chase with Josh Holloway's character Hanaway using one of the coolest gadgets, that inflatable he throws down and shoots those guys and lands on. It's just a great moment before he's assassinated abruptly by Lea Seydoux' character Moreau. Just a really cool opening. Then we kind of find Ethan in a place we wouldn't expect, in a Russian prison, and the whole prison break is tons of fun. Him talking to Benji, and that whole thing. This one has the best humor, I think, of all of them. The comedy here works so well, not just with Simon Pegg, who is a comedic actor, Shaun of the Dead and all that stuff, but Jeremy Renner is hilarious in this as well. And the way those guys play off each other, it just really works. The cast of this one is so good, and they all work together so well. This one has even more of an emphasis on the team. You care about them so much because you get the whole backstory with Hanaway and Jane, Paula Patton's character. They really set that up well, that romance, and then what she's dealing with, kind of going after revenge. And then Renner's kind of just thrown into it, and then you get the whole backstory of who Renner's character was and how he's connected to Ethan and all that stuff. So this one, the character work that they do with this team, I think is just on another level, even from the third one. They just do a great job with it. We get, a couple flashbacks with more context and details that worked really well structured film, very well edited. The sandstorm chase is super exciting. Which is, of course, coming right off that whole Burj Khalifa scene, the tallest building in the world, him climbing that thing. It's just stunning. I mean, if you saw this in IMAX, your stomach was just doing somersaults, because I remember seeing that in IMAX and just being floored by what I was watching. I mean, it was really, really incredible stuff. So just an all-time great stunt sequence. This one, to me, has the opposite problem of 3. Where 3 had a great villain, but the stunts maybe weren't as great. This one has great stunts, but I don't really care for the villain here. He's kind of just like another very generic Russian bad guy, wants to set off a nuke. It's that kind of generic plot thing. But it works to drive the story forward. Again, here we're focused on the team, the IMF team, more than anything else, and all that stuff works. So really enjoy this one. I think it's excellent. There's some continuity here now. We're starting to, they're like reference back to 3 with the wife, and that whole storyline comes full circle. So I like that. I like that they're kind of paying off us longtime fans of the franchise. So excellent stuff. The whole connection between Ethan Hunt and William Brandt, played by Jeremy Renner, I think is some of the strongest stuff in there. Giacchino returns. I think he gives an even better score here. I think it's more emotional. It's kind of grander, as the movie itself is. So big fan of Ghost Protocol. Josh, give us your thoughts on this one.
I was thinking about it earlier today. I feel like this is probably the most well-rounded or the most balanced of the mission films. Maybe, like you said, the villain is a little weak comparatively, but I feel like overall, like with the humor and the stunts and the team, like everything is just balanced so well and executed so well. Even like you were mentioning that opening sequence, like they even introduced like the contact lens and its capabilities. So you kind of get some lead in for that, and like the story setup. So I don't know. It's just a really well balanced film. And I don't know. I almost want to like bump it up a little bit in my ranking as I was thinking about that and realizing I was like, wow, that's just really true. But I just love the other film so much. So it's going to stay where it is for now, which we'll reveal later. But yeah, Brad Bird just does an excellent job. The whole cast does an excellent job, as you alluded to. And I totally agree. This is the funniest. I think this is the funniest mission. Benji just comes back in after they were all super stressed about him climbing up and down the window and then almost missing. And then Benji just like, oh man. And he's like emphasizing how much of a stress he just had running around. And they're like, yeah. But great humor. But
his
whatever.
fake arm though was super funny in those.
Yeah, the fake
in
arm
that sequence.
Yeah, great cast. I don't know. It's just all around stellar film.
Great stuff. Bert, give us your thoughts on Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, this is the most fun mission, I think, by far. I feel like you can really see some correlations between The Incredibles and some of the gadgets and setups that we see here in this film, which is a lot of fun. Same directors. So, and then here's an example of what I think works terrifically with the mission theme is you've got this really fun, inventive, unexpected, sometimes hilarious prison break scene. And then right as they get clear of it, then the theme kicks in. It's playful. See, to me, that kind of works. So I think that's maybe the best use of the theme as far as intros go. And we get some of the best action in the series in this film. That Kremlin break-in with the screen that they use and that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. It's not even an action scene, but it is an action scene. But it doesn't have to be always explosions and stuff like that. It's that kind of creativity combined with humor. I mean, it's like the epitome of what I like from these kind of movies, you know. I will also say from that Kremlin scene, I much prefer a disguise over a mask, you know, because in that, remember that I think the machine didn't work or something and they couldn't create a mask. I think disguises are an even better way to go. Like I like all the practical stuff, you know, but I guess they can't do that all the time. So, you know, depending on what they want to accomplish. The problem with this film, and it's not a big problem, but it is there. And that is right after the terrific Burj Khalifa scene, which by the way, Cruise sprinting down the windows on the outside of that is one of the most jaw-dropping things I've ever seen in film because he's really doing it. I mean, I know he's got something attached to him, but even still, I mean, how many actors would even want to get out there on the outside of that building? Very few. But right after that Burj scene in the sandstorm, I feel like the intensity really gets dialed down. I'm not really sure why, but I feel like there's like a lull. I feel like it carries on the rest of the film until that pretty exciting scene in the vertical parking garage or whatnot, which is a great scene. It kind of reminds me of that Minority Report scene at the factory. You know, it's one of those where there's all kind of moving things and you might get crushed or, you know, whatever. This is a great sequence. And then I love the ending. It's very inventive that he drives the car off of it, which is nuts. But what else are you going to do? Because ultimately you have to stop that. It's just great. It's a great setup, but it's so much fun with this film. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Really, really solid one. All righty. Next up in the Mission franchise is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This one released July 31st, 2015, has a runtime of 2 hours and 11 minutes, a budget of $150 million. And it grossed $682 million worldwide. Here he's bringing in Christopher McQuarrie to direct and write the film. So he's the first writer-director to work on a Mission film. The two had worked together a couple times. McQuarrie's first film as director was Way of the Gun back in the early 2000s. He originally was a writer, though. He started off as a screenwriter. He wrote The Usual Suspects, and that won him the Best Screenplay Oscar at age 29. So pretty incredible feat to accomplish there. He ended up working on several other movies like Valkyrie, with Tom Cruise. He ended up writing and directing. His first film that he directed and wrote was Jack Reacher, also starring Tom. And then he worked on the script of Top Gun Maverick as well. So they've collaborated on, I think, 9 movies at this point. But yeah, he's brought in his second film as director. And this one, I think his talent as a writer really comes through because I feel like this one definitely has the best screenplay. It has some great dialogue, really, really good, well-written dialogue in this film. Just very well structured, great plot, very intriguing, very dynamic and interesting, has some twists and turns that are a lot of fun. This, to me, kind of is where it all comes together because, like I mentioned, 3 has a great, you know, kind of villain. 4 had the big stunts, and this one has both because we get some great stunts here and we get another excellent villain. Solomon Lane, played by Sean Harris, I think is just so creepy He's so intelligent and kind of just, conniving, really, really good. He's a very, you just feel like this guy's dangerous, throughout the whole movie. So he does an excellent job as the new villain here. Another new character introduced is Ilsa Faust, played by Rebecca Ferguson. She does a fantastic job bringing this character to life. She has a great relationship with Ethan Hunt throughout this movie. The way they meet each other and their whole dynamic throughout the entire film, they're kind of back and forth. You're not really sure, is she on his side? What's the whole thing? What's the story here? So just a great dynamic there. But yet it's not really, I wouldn't really call it a romantic thing necessarily. It's a really interesting relationship. It's different from what we've seen in the past. Great team here. Again, we're getting Simon Pegg in an even more prominent role. We're getting Luther back. Ving Rhames is now got a major role again in this film, which is a lot of fun. And then, of course, Jeremy Renner's back. They add in Alec Baldwin as well. So just an excellent cast here they're really all at the top of their game in this film. I feel like this one, they reference several movies like, 3 Days of the Condor, North by Northwest were some movies that they mentioned on the commentary I listened to. It's kind of, again, that mix of a classic spy film with those big action sequences. I mean, that opening scene, the fact that they did it in the opening scene, I love, because you're always, after that Burj Khalifa scene, you're like, what's the next big stunt he's going to do? And of course they kept promoting this airplane thing he's doing, and to start the movie off there was just such a bold move. It's just jaw dropping to see him do that. And you can tell it's real. And it's shocking. It's really just one of those moments in movies that I think will go down in history as one of the most incredible stunts ever performed by an actor or by a stuntman or anyone. It's really, really incredible and super dangerous. I mean, when they're talking about and I was watching behind the scenes of, I mean, a bird could have hit him. I mean, literally, like, the fumes from the engines. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you don't think about that just made that extremely dangerous. I think it's probably the most dangerous thing he's ever done. So just incredible looking scene, very well shot. All the stunts are like that. There's all kinds of the motorcycle chase sequence, the underwater sequence, so many great moments that are just really, really intense and exciting to watch. This one, is all about him tracking the Syndicate, which itself is kind of a villain in the film, other than our main villain, Solomon Lane. I like that whole idea of, this, as he says, rogue nation that's kind of an anti-IMF. And I like that whole thing. I like that he's also on the run from the CIA. So it's really a rogue mission again for Ethan Hunt on his own, trying to get this done, him and his small team. This one, the word I use and the word that Tom Cruise used in the commentary I listened to with him and McQuarrie was elegance. I feel like this film has certain kind of elegance to it that, again, lends itself to more of that spy genre. The whole opera house sequence is one of my favorites in the entire franchise. It's just so well shot and edited and put together. So they do a great job with that. They do a great job with, again, the dialogue of the whole bureaucracy that's going on with the CIA trying to take over the IMF and shut them down and that whole thing. They make that interesting in a way that I think few films can do. Very well. Again, I think it all comes down to the writing. There's a great line that Hunley has, who's played by Alec Baldwin. He says towards the end of the movie, he meets the prime minister and he says, "Hunt is the living manifestation of destiny, and he has made you his mission." It's like just lines like that are just so kind of fun and iconic and kind of sum up the movie in really fun ways. Great dynamics. Again, we're getting a lot of Ethan and Ilsa, and then we'll get kind of Ethan and Benji on their own. And then we'll get Brandt and Luther together on their own too. And all those different groups and the way they interact is great. And then with the way they all come together towards the end is really good. I like that Ethan outsmarts the villain this time. He's not really a physical match for him, but he kind of has to outwit him. I think that's a really different thing that we haven't really seen thus far in the franchise. So yeah, for me, this is where, again, they all kind of come together. The team, the villain, the plot, the stunts. The music is great in this one as well. The music in this one was done by
Joe Kramer.
Joe Kramer, that's right. Joe Kramer, who hasn't done a ton of movies, but he did a really good job here. And it's shot by Robert Elswit, who is an Oscar-winning cinematographer for There Will Be Blood. He also shot the movie The Town, Salt with Angelina Jolie. Really good cinematographer who makes great use of these locations too, that we go to in this movie. So yeah, huge fan of this one. The whole end scene with, you know, Benji strapped to the bomb and all that is just really intense and really well done. Ethan tells Lane, I'm going to put you in a box. And he literally does that by the end of the movie, which is great. So just really well done. Yeah, really well done film on every level. So Bert, give us your thoughts on Rogue Nation.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the cinematographer of Salt, because Salt has a similar scene where there's someone famous that's someone's trying to assassinate, and it happens at like an opera or something like this. and I can't help but think of the movie Get Smart, which of course I think that show probably came after Mission Impossible as the comedic answer to it back in the 60s also, and more recently in the film. But in the recent film, which came about 7 years before this, they have almost the exact same scene played for laughs in Get Smart, but they're at this I think it's an orchestra, and there's one note at the end of this piece they're playing, and when that note happens, that's when the deal goes down. And they do the exact same thing in this movie, but this is not the spoof of Get Smart. It's, you know, anyway, I'm not really sure of that. And that's kind of the problem here, is that this is a very well-made movie. It's very consistent. Like I mentioned in the last movie, Ghost Protocol, that third act isn't really up to par of what that giant stuff you get in the first half or so. Whereas here, it's very consistently good throughout. However, to me, it did lack some of those epic. Now, you felt, Cam, that those action scenes were pretty spectacular and epic, and I feel like the action's good, like the underwater scene. I mean, it's good, but you know, the opera scene, I just didn't feel like it was one of those that just blows you away. So to me, the action wasn't as top notch as some that we got, you know, in other parts of the series. The car chase is good, but it's a bit CG. The motorcycle chases, that's really good. So throughout, it's very enjoyable, but I think it's sort of lacking, in my opinion, just, you know, a couple of those incredible stunts that we just got from Ghost Protocol, and we didn't quite get them to that level in this film.
Gotcha. All right, Josh, give us your thoughts on Rogue Nation.
Maybe to speak to that, I think, like, at least for me, after like the play in the beginning, I think all the other ones, maybe they're not to the same level of grandeur. I think they're all very tense because they all have some element where they have to end. Yeah. Like the underwater one is really cool because, like, well, he actually held his breath the whole time they were doing that. And so, like, there's that element of he can only be under there for so long. And then the one before that, the opera sequence. Like there's the tension of you only have until a time limit until this note, and also you can't make that much noise because you're trying not to disrupt everything going on, which I guess really doesn't matter if we're talking about someone's life, but they're trying not to make a mess. So I don't know, that maybe that was just for me, that I didn't mind that they all weren't as spectacular.
Yeah, and I think they're all good. I like all those scenes. So I'm not knocking the scenes. I'm just saying, you know, just put it in perspective.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so hard to pick a favorite between these movies, but I keep coming back to this one, even after seeing Fallout, and I was like, okay, this is my new favorite. And then, like, as I was thinking about it, like exactly like you said, Cameron, elegance. Like there's a finesse and style in this movie that is just really grabs me and just makes me keep thinking back on it. Like it was really fondly and just kind of gravitate towards it. Just everything is shot so well, especially in that opera sequence and the whole thing with Ilsa's character, like how much on the same side are they and are they not, and you don't know. That was something that the fourth one did really well too, was the espionage and intrigue is kind of within the characters in their own story. And that's kind of like what they do here with her character as well. And of course, you got to love in the beginning with Jeremy Renner, like I can neither confirm nor deny without the secretary's approval, and just stuff like that. As you see, I like that you see not a lot of movies do this, where you see like the fallout of things that happen, no pun intended, of things that happen in previous films in the series. So in this one, like they reference the nuke, like, yeah, but it didn't blow up and stuff like that. And just like the injustice of it as they're trying to like close them up, like you said, close up shop. Hunley's trying to get him shut down. And then like the flip at the end where Hunley is like, hey, do you want to actually be a part of this? He's like, sure. I don't know. It's just a really, really fun movie. And I feel like you said, Bert, the pacing is really well done.
Yeah.
And like every major area or scene they go to, like every major set piece, I feel like it does have like a really big moment, or it's really, there's something intriguing about it and interesting about it.
Oh yeah.
Even like the underwater heist, like I've never seen anything like that. That's so cool. And like the supercomputer, and it's just a really cool set anyway.
Yeah.
And then you have that stunt and stuff like that and the story elements. So yeah, really well done.
Great. All right, guys, let's move on to Mission Impossible Fallout, released July 27th, 2018, has a runtime of 2 hours and 27 minutes, a budget of $178 million, gross $791 million. This one, for the first time, a director returned to the franchise. So Christopher McQuarrie is back from Rogue Nation, penning the script and directing the film. And the thing he did here that was really smart was, in order to kind of try and keep the formula of the franchise going of changing directors, he changed everything but the director, basically. So new composer, new cinematographer, to give the whole film a different feel and a different look, which I thought was really, really smart. So, you know, and the thing about McQuarrie is he's not a director that has a particular style, really, unless you consider just good a style. But he's a kind of a chameleon, a journeyman filmmaker who just kind of wants to tell different kinds of stories on screen. And he's really a student of cinematic history. You can tell from the way he talks about movies. And he actually has a Letterboxd account. If you want to check it out, Christopher McQuarrie. Really? Yeah, you can follow him. He doesn't log a ton of movies, but he's got a really cool list called Tonight's Recommended Viewing. It's just like some of his favorite movies, and he kind of adds to the list every once in a while. So yeah, I'll definitely put that in the description below so you guys can follow him. But yeah, he changes cinematographers. It's Rob Hardy who's DP on this one. He is a very young cinematographer. He's only done a few films, two that I've seen that I enjoy, Ex Machina and Annihilation, both sci-fi films from Alex Garland. So really talented cinematographer. This film has a really cool look to it, really, really unique. And it has some new cast members. So Henry Cavill joins the cast as August Walker. Vanessa Kirby is joining the cast as Alana Mitsopoulos, who is the daughter of Vanessa Redgrave's character Max from the very first Mission Impossible movie. So that was a cool tie-in. Then, of course, we have Angela Bassett joining the cast as well. So really, really good cast members here. I'm kind of missing Jeremy Renner. He's not in this one, but you got to take some trade-offs, I guess. So I think he was shooting Avengers at the time that this was being made, so he couldn't do it. But this one is just a superb action movie. I mean, it's one of the greatest ever made. It is truly stunning what they were able to pull off here. The Halo jump, they had to do like 200 or 300 times to get the shot right, because it's all in a oneer, and the lighting had to be right. The sunset, Tom Cruise had to be only like 3 feet from the camera to be in focus, and like all this just crazy stuff that they had to go through to make that work. So that sequence is incredible. The motorcycle chase through Paris is absolutely stunning. And of course, the stuff at the end with the helicopters and all that is just really, really amazing that Tom Cruise is flying that helicopter. It's bizarre. So again, that ups the ante. Like the past, few movies in the franchise, I feel like this one has clear goals, clear stakes, and a very real sense of urgency. And those three things are key to any film, any action film particularly. And they're all very big and very present. You have these 3 uranium cores, so they can go and create 3 nuclear bombs with. And I just really like the way this movie opens. Josh, as you mentioned, it has like a 20-minute opening scene before we get to the titles, but it's just really good, really well designed. The whole opening dream sequence, which, again, I like new things in a mission movie. We've never really had a dream sequence before. So that was really cool and kind of throws you off. And, we get it another time later in the movie as Hunt is imagining how this whole prison break is going to go down, and that, I might have to kill a police officer. So we can't do it that way. So it's just a cool way of getting into his psyche more. Again, I think these last few movies, we've really gotten to know Ethan Hunt better as a character. And he's one of the best movie heroes, because he's one of those guys that will do anything to accomplish the mission, and the mission is always saving lives. He's always about putting himself in as much danger as he needs to in order to save as many lives as he can. And he can't fix everything, and he can't save everyone, but he's just a great character. So this one does unique things again with the story. Lorne Balfe comes in to compose the score. He's scored some really fun movies. He started in animation with stuff like Megamind and Lego Batman. He did Maverick. He did Black Adam. He's done some really good scores recently. So really like it. Really like the way it's shot. The lighting is great. This one's a little darker, I feel like. It goes a little bit darker than some of the other ones. It still has the humor in it, but it's much more of a kind of intense, engaging kind of dramatic story. So yeah, really like it. I like the whole hospital fake out sequence. That was really well executed. There's several commentaries on this Blu-ray I have of one of them's with McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. One of them's with McQuarrie and the editor, Eddie Hamilton, who also edited Rogue Nation. So he brought him back over. He's a really good editor. And then another commentary track with the composer too. So really, really good stuff there. A lot of good info, but it's all really well executed. The composer was talking about how he knows when not to use music, and how he and McQuarrie talked about that a lot, taking the music out, like the Halo jump, for example. They totally take actually all sound out for a minute, and then they start to slowly bring it back in. So little choices like that, that really, really work. And I like, again, this one's called Fallout because it's kind of about how all the Mission movies have kind of built to this. We're bringing back Solomon Lane as well. So that's a villain that's coming back. That's never really happened before. And so, yeah, just a really engaging, exciting, incredible action movie. I love, again, there's another fake out at the end when the countdown's going and they cut to white. And you're like, oh no, did it go off? And then they slowly bring you back in and it's the sunrise and you see that moment. It's just great. Little things like that just keep you on the edge of your seat that I think were really smart, and really like all the themes here that they're dealing with of moral choices, that the characters have to make. There's that great scene with the police officer in Paris who gets shot, and Ethan has to go and kind of help her. And it's just great little moments like that again are very character based, that really work. So yeah, huge fan of this movie. I don't know if I fully buy after seeing that bathroom scene that Tom Cruise could take on Henry Cavill at the end on the mountain. That's maybe the only criticism I have. But yeah, just an excellent movie all around. Very good writing, very good story, well executed. So Josh, give us your thoughts on Fallout.
Yeah, this one, like, talk about a nail biter. Between this one and 3, I don't know which one had me more on the edge of my seat with the intensity level. And I love that there, like you mentioned, there's so many, or there's at least 2, like those fake outs where you're like, actually there's 3 right in the beginning. Yeah, because you think and I love that they got what's his name, Wolf Blitzer. I love that they got an actual news person to do it, because that just gives it so much instant legitimacy without even really thinking about it. It's kind of like subconscious. I love how they did that. Like, they could have just had anybody, but because they had a real person, it made it seem more real. And especially because it's right in the beginning of the film, and you're like, oh man, okay, so they failed.
Right. So this is why it's called Fallout.
Yeah. And now the movie's going to be about whatever happens after that. And then you realize, with the great fake out, that it wasn't. And that was really well done. Well, at the very end, obviously, like you mentioned, but later with the police scene, up until the very end, you think that's real too. And a great choice again there with I don't think they took all the music out entirely, but it's kind of just one note, or it's very, very solemn, kind of like Michael Bay does sometimes, where he takes the music out a little bit and lets you really feel what's happening on screen. So good choices there. Great cast. Like you mentioned before as well. Solomon Lane's probably my number 2, or he's really close to there with Philip Seymour Hoffman's character as the villain. Just that total, they have something planned in the back of their mind, and you don't know what it is, but they will accomplish it. But you don't know entirely what they're going to do. And I really like that's what his character brings as well, even though in the first part of it, he's in prison. And I like that they answer the question of what happened to Julia, because in the 5th movie, and you're kind of seeing in this movie too, you're kind of seeing a little bit of maybe kind of leaning towards a romance with Elsa, and you're like, wait, no, you're married, what are you doing? And then I like how they actually answer that. I thought that was well done. Kind of weird, but it works. Yeah, and just the stunts, I don't know, like you mentioned, Tom Cruise. And this is the opposite of the last movie. They put the big stunt that they promote at the end instead of the very beginning, which is him piloting the helicopter by himself. He has learned how to do so many things. It's incredible. I am just jealous of all the actors for Top Gun Maverick 2 that they actually got to do the stunt, the fighter pilot in a real jet. Oh my gosh, because usually it's just him, but they got to do it as well. So with so many cameras there, it's even with the Halo jump, like you said, he has to be so far away from the camera. He has to do the stunt, and it's a little easier to fall than it is to pilot a helicopter, but they got to do the stunt, and then they got to act as well for whatever's going on in the shot. Doing all those things together is just crazy that he's able to pull these off. It's just incredible. But yeah, Walker, Henry Cavill as Walker is just great. The fist pump is super awesome. Even though people kind of poke fun at it, I think it's just great. It's a really cool moment. And Benji finally gets to wear a mask. So there's that. After I like it, that little story element carried through, oh, Benji doesn't get to wear a mask. And then he finally gets to, and that was another reveal that I was totally blew me away. There's so many moments in here that were just like, what? That were really well done.
Definitely. All right, Bert, give us your thoughts on Fallout.
One thought I had is Solomon Lane has been the villain for 2 movies in a row like this, and he's basically stationary the entire time. You know,
It's true.
he's being carted around with different people, and but it is good acting though. I mean, I like him as a villain. When you watch 5 and 6, it doesn't even feel like the same director. That's how different these movies really kind of seem distinctive in that way. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just I had to look up to see if it was the same director. Somehow they took what they did in 5 and just vaulted it just to a huge, just way above where it was previously, in my opinion. Oh, I need to talk about the music in this. This is, I think, one of the best scores ever written. And the thing is, it's a lot of the same bits of the regular theme for Mission Impossible, but Lauren Balfe kind of extrapolated parts of it and slowed down the timing. And it's just so much more intense. It is darker, but like the Jules theme is just it's really melancholic and dreamy. And that's the thing about the whole film, really, is it just feels kind of dreamy. And I think that's the credit of the cinematographer, and that's the best way I can describe it, I guess. But the pace is really intense throughout the film. Alec Baldwin is given so much more to do in this film, and he is great in the role that he's in. There's several thrilling sequences. That bathroom fight, the extraction of Lane, which I think is maybe the best use of a mask in the entire series, because it really fools the audience twice, I think, with Lane. And that Paris motorcycle chase against wrong way traffic is just one of the best stunts again in the series. There's just so much of that kind of stuff here. What really vaults this film even higher too is that I think more so than most of the ones in the series, and more than almost every action movie ever made, is when they actually take an accounting of the collateral damage, like Cam, we were talking about. And there's a couple times. There's I think you mentioned them both, but when they open the door and they realize a woman cop is standing there and they don't want to shoot her, and just the time they take to just show that they're really about saving lives and they're not trying to hurt people in the process. Few action films go to that length, and it's done so well. And then just the idea too that they might have to, murder dozens of cops, and puts the audience in a great position too, because next thing you see, they're starting that scene and you're like, whoa, are they just gonna do it? They're just gonna murder the cops. And so, but clearly they don't, and they don't tell the audience that. I like that. I might have talked about this film in our Cruise podcast we did. Go on a lot more about it, but those are my thoughts on it.
I say also, like you mentioned, Cameron, the connection to other films. Like this one actually brings it has a connection to every single other film. Like Vanessa Kirby's character being her mom being in the first movie. There's a one-liner about Solomon Lane basically being the bad guy behind the bad guy in Mission Impossible 2, bringing down the plane to get to one guy. They say obviously Julia is connected from the other ones, but I like that there's it kind of brings it all together, and you see like the whole series kind of culminating, we thought culminating in this film.
Yeah,
that's great. I actually didn't catch that reference to MI2. You're totally right.
I didn't either.
Wow. That's great.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Good one.
It's literally like blink and you miss it one line.
I remember the line. I just didn't realize it was referring to MI2. Yeah, that's great.
Sorry, and one other thing, and the score. Like you said, Bert, is really good, really punchy, and that's this one adds those little bongos, just like right in the beginning, just like kind of like gearing up with the bongos, and it's so good. Like this, I can just listen to that theme, and I'm like, whatever I got to do, let's go do it. Let's right now. I'm pumped. And that just speaks exactly to the tone of this film. It like doesn't let up almost the entire. Once it starts going, it doesn't let up. And I thought Lauren Balfe did a really good job with that.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think it's the best score of the series.
It's a great one for sure. Okay, guys, we've made it to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. This one was released July 12th, 2023. It's now in theaters. Has a runtime of 2 hours, 43 minutes, budget of $290 million. So far, domestically, it's grossed $122 million. And globally, $240 million. So it has already pretty much made its budget back. And this summer, I'm sure will continue to make more and more money. got to go to the early fan event. I got a IMF pin. I'm now an official member of the Impossible Mission Force.
Nice.
So I got that poster
That's
back
all it
there.
takes too.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it was a fun video. You can check that out on the channel now. This one again, written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. He comes back for a second time, directing his third Mission Impossible movie. Lorne Balfe also returns to compose the musical score. This is a really solid Mission Impossible movie. Had a great time in the theater watching it. Very exciting. It's everything we've come to expect from these movies. You know, it's just big action, really engaging, interesting story. Again, they change up the villain and make it a totally different thing that I was not expecting. That was a lot of fun. It really kind of, again, just continues to push the bounds of the franchise pretty much on every front. We get some returning characters like Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa, Simon Pegg as Benji, Ving Rhames is back as Luther, but we've got a lot of new characters too. We've got Carrie Elways in there. We've got Pom Klementieff, who people will know as Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy. Haley Atwell, Agent Carter from Captain America. Then Henry Czerny returns as Kittredge from the very first Mission Impossible movie. So some returning cast members, some brand new ones, and the new cast members I thought were fantastic. Great additions to the cast, really dynamic, interesting characters with really complex and interesting backstories, and they play an interesting role in the story itself and the way they come into the story. Just do really excellent work. The cast is really good. It's very well written. It has just some incredible, again, locations. There's a whole desert sequence. There's a sequence in Rome. They go to Venice. If you've seen the trailer, there's a big train sequence. And so they just do all these really interesting locations that look great, more incredible action. It, follows the formula that we've kind of set up throughout, but it kind of adds new elements to it as well. Specifically with some of the new characters, some plot elements, and the villain. To me, it felt a little bit long. It's about 2 hours and 43 minutes, so it's definitely the longest one, and it feels it at certain points. I think there's maybe a little too much exposition going on, in the dialogue, which is it's well delivered, it's well written. It's just I felt a little too unnecessary, like they're trying to explain what's going on multiple times. So I feel like they could have cut 15, 20 minutes out of it. But then again, you're sacrificing pacing. Like it was interesting. I was, listening to them talk about Fallout. The original cut of Fallout was actually much shorter. It was about 10 minutes shorter, and they put more stuff in because the audience felt like I need room to breathe here. Like there's too much going on. So maybe that's what they felt here too. I'm not sure. Another negative is that it's very much a part one. It's very much like here's the first part of the story, and next year you'll get the rest of it. So I'm not a fan of when they do these part one, part two movies. I feel like they should try to make it, and it feels like a complete movie. It's not like a huge cliffhanger ending necessarily, but it's just not, the story's not over. You very much feel like it's unresolved. So really enjoyed it though. It's again, these filmmakers are at the top of their game. So it's 4.5 stars for me. Bert, I know you haven't seen it yet. Josh, you want to give us your brief thoughts on Dead Reckoning?
I agree with your complaints about not so much experiencing it, but thinking about it after. I think I agree that there was a little too much exposition. I would have done something differently in the beginning without being spoilery. I really liked the plot, the concept, the ideas that they're going for here and the themes they're dealing with. It's actually very timely considering everything going on. Again, I won't spoil anything, but so I really like that angle. And I feel like I hope important people in the world are watching this movie. But yeah, some of the exposition was, like, looking back, I think there was a little too much of that, and it was a little too long, I think. But I really liked the stunts and the new characters, especially Haley Atwell's character was really cool. I like her a lot. And I had absolutely no idea Pom Klementieff was the same actress, plays her, and then is in Guardians. Like I was just, because totally different character. I mean, maybe it's like the eyes too, but yeah, with Mantis, had absolutely no idea. I was literally floored when I looked at that. I was like, geez, because I was just clicked on it on like Letterboxd, and I was like, oh, she's in all these Marvel films. Oh, that's weird. I wonder what she did. No idea. And then like I saw something that said, that's the same person? No way. There's no way. And so, yeah, so her character is great in this too. I really liked her character. I thought they did a good job with that. A lot of the characters that they added, like you said, Cam, I really liked what they contributed, and the returning characters were really cool. I like the way, like, you look at the trailer and you think maybe one thing's going to happen, but I like that they play with that like expectations thing. And of course, the stunts are great, and there's good like edge of your seat action throughout the film. I don't mind the part one as much. I think they did a really good job handling, at least in my opinion, I thought they did a really good job handling that, because sometimes, like you said, it's kind of like, oh well, this is part one, and like, but they did a really good job like capturing the story that they were telling, or at least a part of it in part one that they're telling. I just feel like they handled it really well. In short, good film. I feel like I'll like it more upon re-seeing it. It wasn't my favorite mission. I feel like it's the first one that goes down a bit, but other than that, it was a definitely enjoyable film.
Excellent. Okay, folks, we have now reviewed every Mission Impossible movie thus far. Now it is time to reveal our rankings of the franchise. Now we're going to start with our least favorite all the way up to our favorite Mission Impossible movie. Wow, this was a difficult ranking. I mean, there's a lot of these that could kind of be anywhere for me. Really tough to rank some of these. So it was a difficult challenge, but we chose the mission. So it is up to us to accomplish it now. I'll start off with my number 7, Mission Impossible 2. So Mission Impossible 2 ended up at the bottom for me, even though it's got some nostalgic value because it's the first one I watched and it's got some beautifully shot action. It just has some things that just don't work character story wise. Even the Holy Spirit could not save the film because he does make an appearance. But movies don't have souls, so this one could not be saved.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
What's your ranking or your
My rating on it, it's 3 stars. 3 stars.
Okay.
Yeah, it's close to, I mean, it's like 2.5, 3. It's like,
yeah.
I pushed it over to 3. It was kind of in between there, but yeah, I ended up giving it a solid 3-star review. Josh, go ahead and give us your number 7.
I also have Mission Impossible 2 at number 7. And I'd also probably say it's about 3 stars.
Gotcha. All right, Bert, give us your number 6.
It's the first film, and I'm 2.5, 3 stars on that one. It's just it's a little slow at times, and even though it's got that great scene where he comes down in the room, the end scene kind of takes some points off. So that's where I land. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. At my number 6 is Mission Impossible 3. Again, great villain, great story. They really start to focus on the characters more. But I feel like the weak stunts and the cinematography just doesn't have that grand scale that I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, again, JJ is a first-time filmmaker. He, is a TV guy, so there's a lot of close-ups and things like that, and a lot of handheld style that works and it's different, but it just doesn't reach the level of the other ones for me. So a movie I really like, 4 stars. I mean, really, really good movie, but doesn't quite reach some of the other ones. So Josh, what do you have at your 6?
For my number 6, I have the first Mission Impossible, and this probably be, I don't know, maybe 3.5 stars.
Gotcha. Oh, great. All right, let's go to Bert with your number 5.
My 5 is MI3. Yeah, I mean, you made some very good comments about it, so I just echo that. Yeah, I'm at about 3.5 stars, so just below where you were at on that.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All right.
Despite the complaints I had with it.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
All right. My number 5 is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. So this is the latest film now in theaters. It made the top 5, but again, it feels like a part 1. And it feels a little long at times. Feels like there's a little too much there. So maybe after I watch part 2, I'll appreciate one more. But at the current ranking, it made number 5. So Josh, what do you have at 5?
I also have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think with subsequent viewings and seeing 2, because that could totally change everything. Kind of like, anyone who didn't like Infinity War was just wait till Endgame. That could totally change everything you think about this film. So I think multiple rewatches and seeing part 2 will has a potential. I don't know. All these films are so tight. The rest of these, it may bump it up.
Gotcha. All right, Bert, give us your number 4.
Rogue Nation. I'm at 4 stars on that, and everything about it is very good. There's very little that's elite, I guess. So I'm at 4 stars on that one.
Gotcha. Great. All right. At number 4, I have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Man, these top 4 were just neck and neck. So these could kind of be anywhere, but 4.5 stars. Excellent movie on every level. A little bit of a weak villain, a little forgettable, a little generic with the villain and his whole plot, but still a very, very exciting movie. So Josh, give us your number 4.
At my number 4, I also have number 4, Ghost Protocol. Okay. Same points. I think it's like just thinking about the film, I think it is like the weaker villain. And actually, Bert, what you kind of said of Rogue Nation, it doesn't have that. At least for me, it like it's all really well balanced. It just doesn't have that like super punchy, over the top like intensity, or you know what I mean, kind of like some of the other ones rise to. It's a little more even keeled than all the other ones. So I think those two things are the main reason that it doesn't crack number 4 or higher than number 4.
Gotcha.
All right, Bert, give us your number 3.
Mine is Ghost Protocol, and I feel like they front loaded this movie with all the good stuff. I still enjoy the last act, but in the parking garage scene is really good too. But yeah, for those reasons, I'm pretty much neck and neck with Rogue Nation, because as I said, Rogue Nation is just so consistently good throughout. So those two could flip, you know.
Gotcha. Ghost Protocol also has 2 great lines that Ethan Hunt gets to utter, which is "light the fuse" and "mission accomplished." It's so good.
Yes.
And when they make fun of it afterwards,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
That's the best.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. All right, on to my number 3, which is Mission Impossible, the very first Mission Impossible movie. I find to be just a thrilling, engaging espionage thriller, really. It's more than an action film. It's just a kind of really twisty, turny kind of spy movie with that kind of throwback classic style of the cinematography and everything. Just a really big fan of that first one. And without it, we wouldn't have all the others. So that one ended up being at number 3. Josh, what do you have at your 3?
At number 3, I have Mission Impossible 3. So from here on out, all these could literally change at the drop of a hat. Like,
gotcha.
Can they all tie? I don't know. Like, I can't pick a favorite, and I just have had to like decide this is what it is, because I literally I could interchange all of these top 3, literally.
Gotcha. Great. All right, Bert, give us your number 2.
It is the second one, MI2. I'm at 4.5 stars on that sucker. And I admit it's got faults. I don't care. I love it.
That's great. That's great. All right, on to my number 2. It is Mission Impossible Fallout. Fallout ended up at my number 2 spot. One of the greatest action movies ever made. It is absolutely incredible from beginning to end. Another great villain, a returning villain, as well as a new villain. Great characters that I like returning, really good new characters. Yeah, it's just the stunts he's doing are insane. So these top 2 are super hard to rank, but Fallout ended up being my number 2.
Wow.
Josh, what do you have at your number 2?
I also have Mission Impossible Fallout, and I'll explain why it didn't get number 1 at the end here. But each of these, the first 3 rankings here, are all 5 stars.
Gotcha. All right, Bert, we're on to your number 1. What is your favorite Mission Impossible film?
It is Fallout. And I just got to point out that Ghost Protocol was really good. Rogue Nation was really good. And then you get Fallout, which is, I think, a huge step up even yet. It's an incredible 3-movie run, though. And I mean, I obviously haven't seen the next one, but yeah.
Yeah, excellent selection. All right, my number 1 pick is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I feel like this one has everything I want in a mission movie. It leans more into the spy elements, I think, than Fallout, which is maybe why I like it a little bit more. Again, it has that elegance of that really just tight plot, dialogue, characters. It introduces Ilsa, who's one of my favorite characters. Jeremy Renner gets to come back, who I just adore. So this one just has every element. All my favorite elements from all the other movies are in this one, basically, is why I ended up picking it. And just all the sequences, from the opera to the motorcycle to the underwater stuff, the airplane. I mean, it's just an incredible film. So that ended up at my number 1. Josh, your number 1?
Rogue Nation.
All right.
And yeah, the elegance, that's why for me, like between this and Fallout, it's like and 3, like just thinking as I think back over them, I feel like Fallout is more like and maybe it's just because it was so intense, like it feels like it's more exhaustive if I have to go back and watch it. But not if I have to, if I get to go back and watch it. But Rogue Nation, just that elegance, it's just so easy to just, I don't know, just think on it fondly for me anyway. So that's what pushes it over the edge to number 1.
Great stuff. All right. Well, folks, that is our Mission in Podcastable, as I've dubbed it. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Hopefully you guys did too. Thank you again, Bert.
Yeah, thanks, Cam.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you again for listening. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Those links are in the description below. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. Next week, we are coming back with the Christopher Nolan podcast. It should be a lot of fun. So join us next week. We'll see you next time right here on The Real World. This podcast will self-destruct in 5 seconds.